is Jennifer Baumgartner. I'm the executive director of the Feminist Press. And 22 years ago when I moved to New York, I worked at Ms. Magazine. It was my first job. And one of the best things I ever got to do was become friends with Anastasia through that job. She was an intern, I hired her. I was like, you have a really awesome name, Anastasia Higginbotham. And she was an awesome person to kind of live up to that name. You have to inhabit a name, you know? And over the years, we're very close friends. Our kids know each other. They claim to have met before they were even in our wombs because they met as particles just in the universe. And they've really, and I think that demonstrates that kids can teach you a lot and like deepen your thinking a lot. And the Feminist Press, the first book we ever published was a children's book. And the Feminist Press was created to retrieve a lost literature, to recover a lost literature. And books that were going out of print or weren't being published, voices that weren't being published only because they were written by women, not for any other reason. And I think we've evolved since then. This was 45 years ago now that Feminist Press was founded. We've evolved since then to really use the lenses of the women's movement and of feminism to create books that amplify our understanding of us as human beings. And one of the main things that I think we do so valuably as feminists, that just feminists do and feminism does, what the Feminist Press does, is allow people to tell the truth about what has happened to them. And think of how infrequently you can come into a room and feel like, I'm bringing all the parts of myself into this room with me. You know, the part that's had an abortion, or the part that felt ugly until I was 14, or whatever your thing is, you can bring all those parts of you in the room with you and be the whole person that you are. And feminism, while I don't think we've created that world, it holds out the promise of that world and it creates resources to create that world. So Divorce is the Worst is a really, and this whole Ordinary Terrible Things series is very important to me because I was someone who was in denial for a long time about the choices I've made as a parent. When I had my first child, I felt like this is a really awesome story. I'm such a kick-ass single mom. I chose not to be with the dad because I knew we didn't get along, and I'm so strong and everybody's supporting me and it's great. What could go wrong? You know, what could be bad in this picture? And it took me a lot of years of therapy and to learn a lot from my son to realize like my experience was not his experience. And in fact, it was very stressful for him to have two parents that he loved deeply who not only didn't live together, really couldn't get along about anything. I was sort of like, hey, your home was never broken. We bought it this way. It always looked like this, you know, thinking that was some sort of, you know, like positive. And again, after years of therapy, and I say that really sincerely as opposed to like a throwaway joke about that, I feel like I've really been able to face the denial, all the guilt and shame I felt about taking responsibility for my choices and then realizing that if I could actually hear my son and hear his experience, I might be able to support him as he negotiates what his reality is. So he's 10 now and he has skills that I'm learning, but he has these skills now. And this book is an attempt to let a child narrate their experience of ordinary, totally ordinary, nonetheless terrible, hard to deal with things. It's a total gift, and I've never read it. Anastasia knows this. I've never read it, like I was crying during the trailer, without really being moved, and not because it makes me sad, but because it allows me to connect to parts of myself that are very important and that are vulnerable, and I think it provides a safe object to touch those feelings.
My parents divorced, told us about the divorce, my siblings and I, I'm one of 5, when I was 14. And they said it was for the best. And it was for them. For me, it was the worst. Our family had always been a family together. And when we were all together, when everybody was home, that included my dad. As soon as he moved out, an important member of the family was always missing, whether we were with our mom or with our dad. And we were still a family, but we would never again be our family. And though they weren't cruel people, my parents were harsh about everything having to do with their separation. So my dad moved out on Father's Day. I don't know why that was just the most convenient day. My mother described the woman that he was involved with, her coworker, as the solution to the problem, not the problem. And their advice to us was horrible. Don't let this affect you. It was the best they could do. And they didn't want their undoing to be our undoing. And we had parents who loved us, and who were going to put us through college no matter what. Nothing to complain about, nothing to get over. So, behold, my life's work. My poor parents. So, my book, Divorce is the Worst, does two things that haven't been done in a kids' divorce book before. One, it does not try to make kids feel better about their parents' divorce. Two, it does not subtly insist that they accept and trust and believe that their parents have their best interests at heart. No author knows whether the separation or divorce of the kid's parents are going to be the best in the short or long run for that reader. And no author knows none of us knows whether the parents are acting in the child's best interest. We don't know, and we shouldn't promise. And so here's what my book does instead. It stays close to the main character as the child gets the news. It names the feelings as they come up and observes a bunch of changes brought on by divorce or separation. It's there with the child for their first visit to a counselor who deftly asserts, this is not your fault, none of this, you're not to blame for any of this. It is present for the child's late night existential crisis where they cope with how it feels to have no control over your life. And it mirrors the child's horror at meeting a parent's friend. It bears witness to a child who's accidentally ignored by parents who are caught up with their own lives. There's lots to do. And it stands by as the child is presented with a guilt gift from parents who are guilty, who want it all to be okay. They want it all to turn out all right. As far as the parents' reasons for splitting, my book encourages kids to just let that float right out of your mind. And, down the drain, suck it up the vacuum cleaner, flush it down the toilet, wash your hands of it. And it acknowledges that a divorce may be the best for your parents, and then reminds the child, you are not your parents. And this experience, your experience of this, is what matters. And that's yours. So when the book ends, the child, the main character, peeks out and addresses the reader directly for the first time. Here's a question to think about, says our now experienced child of divorce. What's in your backpack? And what follows is an upending of feelings and thoughts that a child may not even know they were carrying around. And if they can stand to dump it out and look at it all, they may find what is useful to them or what's weighing them down. Finally, it encourages the child to make a collage page of their own with the sky that reflects what they feel, grass and dirt and rocks underneath them, trees to hide them or lift them up. And all they need to do is put themselves there on the scene and smack in the center of everything and find out who they are in the midst of this ordinary, terrible thing called divorce. So thank you for your interest in it, and I can't wait to share the book with you. I can wait. But I'm so glad you're here, and I look forward to hearing from people who come to talk about their own reasons for attaching to this project.
So I thought we could do order Lisa, Deb, and then Mark.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say I feel very honored to be included in this project. And, when I first saw the book in Red Galley, I was, sort of like Jennifer said, it just goes right to the core. I was so touched by it. And in thinking about what is so special and so touching about the book, I feel like the combination of the materials used and the language immediately puts you inside that child. And there's no refuting that child's experience. And so I actually feel like it is as much a book for parents as it is for children. Because I think, just like Jennifer was saying, parents with their best intentions are trying to make it all be okay. so the kinds of things that parents typically say, you know, you're great, you have 2 bedrooms, or you'll get 2 Christmases, or all these things that parents say to try to soothe their children are, you know, they're so understandable and they're heartfelt and they're well intended, but they miss the mark on what the experience of the child is. And I feel like this book, like no other book that I've seen for children of divorce, it just hits that mark, you know, that confusion, the loneliness, and the honesty about the parents being caught up. I mean, any of you who've been divorced, it's a devastating, revolutionary experience, and even doing all of your best work to stay present, it's impossible. You're going to hurt your children. You know, you're going to be overwhelmed and sad and distracted. And I love the way the book, in a gentle way but an honest way, acknowledges that that is part of the divorce experience. Like, no matter how much your parents are trying to take care of you, they're gonna miss the mark because it's just too big. And so I'm very, very excited. I mean, I'm a child therapist and family therapist, and I feel like I'm excited to get my hands on the book because I feel like I want to have it in my office. I want to be able to read it with children. I want to be able to recommend it to parents to read first, to read with their children, to help them sort of put aside all of the, you know, hopes that this won't be damaging, to sort of help their, you know, and be able to be present and witness. Use the word witness, and I think that's very important. It's like the book is a witness to the child's experience, and that's really what we want parents to do. I mean, if we can do anything, it's to be a witness to our children. And so I really feel like Divorce is the Worst does that. It encourages parents to be a witness to their children, and allows the child to separate enough from the situation to be a witness for themselves. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I'm Deb Vilas, and I'm an instructor and advisor at Lake Street College. I teach people who are learning how to be teachers or child life specialists working in hospitals. So teachers and child life specialists deal with children in all of their lives. Kid that goes to school, kid that ends up in the hospital, brings their life with them. And so I often get emails and phone calls saying, do you have a book that will help me, or help this parent, help this child? And all of a sudden this beautiful book comes across my desk, and by a good friend, which makes it all the more dear. But even if I didn't know Anastasia, I would be singing the praises of this book, because I'm probably going to say the same thing that's already been said, but in my own words, that she steps into the shoes of the child, really showing you the child's perspective, what the concerns are, the feelings, the emotions, the confusion. And yet, even as she's laying out what the parents are doing that might be missing the mark, she doesn't vilify the parents. This is a readable book. This is not going to be something that parents cannot look at, because they have to be able to look, right, if they're going to have a conversation with their child. You certainly explained some of the challenge of that, to be honest, and to look at how your decisions affect a being in the world that you brought in the world to protect, and now your decisions are affecting them in such a hard way. I also want to say that something else that she does that is quite amazing is that Anastasia did this with very few words. And we can all remember being kids and having parents go, wah, 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 wah. And after a couple of sentences, you just tune it out. This book is accessible because of the use of imagery, interspersed with very sparse language. It really is accessible. The kids are not going to shut down. It doesn't have an easy Hollywood Disney ending, because there won't be. We were just having a conversation about this. It's like, when do kids get over this? And well, it's going to be a thread throughout their lives. And when children learn at an early age to talk about their feelings, they have a weapon, they have a coping mechanism to, as they come around to whatever developmental stage, that graduation where the family, the complicated family, is there or is not there, the holidays, the wedding, whatever it is as they go through their life, they've got a foundation in this book to learn how to talk and to be heard. And again, the word witnessing, One of my favorite quotes is, "I'll be the witness in the silences when words are not enough." And Anastasia's words are enough, her images are enough, their blushes, you want to reach out and touch them. And I'm just so excited.
Thank
you. Can't wait to see this one.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark LaCava. I work at Spence Chapin. I'm the clinic director of their Modern Family Center. I wish I'd have read this book because you guys are speaking so well of it. I did read a little bit of your blurb on it and some of the what we saw today. And books are so important in therapy. They're so important for the parent to have a reference, for even the therapist and the child to read. And lots of times with divorce, I find that kids groups work even better than individual work because kids can express themselves with other children more than they can even with their therapists. And a book like this, what I think this book is, I'm excited to look at it, is it's something that we can share together. We can share as a group. We can read with the child individually, with their parent, and the parent will have a reference too. Something that's very simple but powerful. Like I was just thinking when I was looking at the video, this summer I had a couple come in and was working with their child for a little bit of time on some different issues. They said, "We have to tell you something." I said, "What?" They said, we're going to separate, and I think that will throw a monkey wrench into it. I said, "I think it's going to throw a monkey wrench into what we've been working on." So we talked about it and how to tell the kids, and the next week or 2 weeks later they came back and I asked them how it went. And they're like, "It went really well." The kids had really small reaction to it. I was like a little disappointed. But here we are 4 months later, and like all the kids are in therapy. Who's acting out this way? Who completely shut down? So it doesn't just happen right then and there. It happens over time. And with kids, especially younger kids, they have to go back and repeat it and think about it. And a book is a beautiful way to do that because you see it the first time, you'll read it again. Kids tend to read it over and over, and they get to understand what they're feeling a little bit better.
Thank you.
Banana Splits is a program that kind of builds on what Anastasia has in what kind of the emotional position of a child whose parents have separated or are in the process or have been long divorced or never married, whatever the situation is. It's in many schools throughout the country, and it's a way to kind of normalize, to get kids together, kind of normalize their experience and give them the opportunity to know other children who live in what we call split families because of the name Banana Splits, so we often refer to them that way. Banana Splits was founded years ago or developed actually in a public school, and now is in New York, particularly in New York, is being implemented in many of the independent schools. And what happens with Banana Splits is children come during their lunchtime and spend, about however long their lunch time is, might be only a half hour, with others who are close to their age, and talking and also playing games that have to do with having a split family. And a lot of the games have to do with, little cards that might ask about feelings or might ask give information about something like what is custody or something like that. And it just gives children, well, for one thing, a vocabulary, and it helps them build their awareness of the different kinds of feelings that they might have. And, an opportunity to think and kind of identify their life story and weave a thread that continues through all the years that they're in the school, because we have this starting from the 6-year-olds, all the way through the 8th grade, which is where our school ends. And I think about half the value of it is really that they know other children whose lives have been affected in the same way, and they don't feel so alone, and they don't feel, oh, I'm the only one who has this kind of lifestyle and maybe goes between 2 homes or whatever it might be. And I think they get so much from that, and they see that child, the other children who have that situation, every other week, and they see them around the school, and they know even the older kids who might not be in their group, and they can get to know that who they are, and that there are many others whose lives are a little bit, different in that way, and it doesn't feel like such a challenge as much as it might otherwise. And they become more aware of their own feelings and able to articulate them. So it's a wonderful program. We also include children who have a deceased parent, when there is a child at that grade level. But the main thrust of it is banana splits, and they are very big fans of the fact that at the end of the year we have a party, the last meeting of the year, and they have a real banana splits.
I feel like, obviously what we really want people to understand the power of this book and get really excited about it. But the reason that we asked experts to come speak is because divorce is, I think we know, that's incredibly common. And yet this movement toward making it have, minimizing impact on the child in a meaningful way is relatively new. So lots of divorces are now mediated, but you need all of these pieces, these holistic pieces, in order to really be able to, in a responsible way, help your child as best you can to deal with the stress that's inevitably going to happen, how stressed out they're going to be, and sad they're going to be in the face of a divorce. And so I hope for people who are thinking of doing stories, maybe larger stories about divorce, or I know I kind of, in a bitchy way, was like, conscious uncoupling, about Gwyneth's thing earlier, but I thought about it a lot since then, and I realized conscious uncoupling requires things like this, requires books like this. You really do have to think about your child and think about that perspective and be able to take responsibility for the impact and be able to hear it without spiraling into, as I was saying, shame and guilt. And at the same time, you're not expected to do it alone. There is really a movement now of people who are trying to support families in meaningful ways that you can access. And this book is a portable object that you can have in your home, the way books are. This is your own. You open it up and it's that world. You're entering into that world that's being created right now. And your child can have it and have a personal moment with it, or a more group and collective. And you can have it and have your own experience with that book and what the book can teach you and allow you to touch in yourself. So if people have questions or thoughts, I thought we'd spend like a couple minutes asking questions of either any of the experts, as I keep calling them, or Anastasia. And then after that, we can just sort of mingle a little bit too. Or people can go to work. I really been here since 8 in the morning.
When I found this, this square of lunch bag, grocery bag paper, and I realized how little was necessary to really get to the heart of it. Then it just started to flow, because I realized it's so, it doesn't need much, and with kids, I agree with what Deb was saying. They're so overwhelmed with information and demands and expectations. And so to have, my job, I realized, was to create an image that moved me. And often I would get the image, I was on the subway when I realized I needed to do the page about the feeling of being split, with the kid reaching this way and the tension in the middle. And burst into tears on the subway. and not because I was sad, even. It was just like, no, that's the image. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. So so that's how each page happened. And if it makes them cry, I know it's good. But some of them don't, and some of them are just a matter of like, no, I need to, it's just going to be a couple of words, and I need a beautiful door frame. Death, confusion about sex, and that one's called Tell Me About Sex, Grandma. And, I don't think of sex as a terrible thing, but I do think of the experience of trying to make sense of it and trying to put together the biology of it with the anatomy of it, with all the fuss about it and the cultural obsession with it. Trying to process all that information, I think, is extremely overwhelming. And it's real easy to get lost, and it's real easy to find yourself in treacherous territory when you didn't mean to be. And so Tell Me About Sex, Grandma is a way to talk about, for the main character to find out about a dangerous thing with somebody you can trust.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, and you're doing incest and sexual abuse too, which I think is really amazing in terms of when you think of topics that are common, but no one wants to hear about or is willing to, there's just so much denial.
Yeah, so I'll do that too. And bullying, and in the one that's about the bullying, it's, the issues of identity and sexual identity and gender and being targeted for something you don't even know what it is that people see. And they're coming at you with all this energy. Some of the energy is attacking and some of the energy is curiosity and, this prurient interest in what's going on with you. And a child who's really like, I don't know what I'm putting out, I don't know who they think I am. So, is that it? Death, confusion about sex, sexual abuse,
Illness.
bullying, and chronic illness. And my partner is a child life specialist, and he has been a huge influence on his experience of that has been a huge influence on my understanding of what it's like for a child to be hospitalized regularly, miss school, miss out, and have to negotiate that. And that book also, it's called Sick of This, and it's about, it includes some of the issues that, why do so many kids have asthma? Really bad asthma. You have to go to the hospital. And the environmental racism that's involved in that.
And in terms of rollout, so this book is pubbing in April, and then 2 will pub next year. We haven't set the exact dates, and then we'll kind of continue that way. So roughly every 6 months there'll be a new book available.
Thank you.
Especially if we have a really powerful launch with Divorce. Lauren.
I love what a couple people said about how, as an adult, reading this book to your child, with your child, it's in some ways really therapeutic for the adult as much as it is for the child. I'm curious if that's something that you are consciously striving for with the other books as well.
Yes, it's secondary to what I'm trying to do. I really hold myself accountable to the child first, the child reader, but I'm aware of the fact that we're looking at this from all sides. I mean, grandparents have their way into divorce and their grief about it, and with all of the issues, yes, I think it's more challenging for the adult. It demands more, but I think that's as it should be. I think I can have higher expectations of the adults and still keep my respect for the child's intelligence and ability to understand and relate very, very high, and keep that center, that focus right on them.
There's no indication of the parents' genders either.
Yeah. No.
But it's done very
parents
subtly.
are
It's not like
yes.
this overt, I'm making a big point. It's just like you could imagine, you could inhabit it.
Because all the other books, the main ones, mom, dad.
Right.
And it's, and a lot of assumptions, including, there's the mom-dad assumption, and then there's the assumption, and they're not bad books, but they're exclusive to a certain kind of divorce and a certain profile of a child, a certain demographic. And families just aren't that way. And, I can't remember what. Oh, there's a place in the book where for a little while we don't see the child's face. I don't know, those moments, I really appreciate putting characters in where you know how that is when you don't know what a child is thinking, the child that you love and that you care for.